In the dimly lit ambiance of a bustling New York City bar, the night was alive with the vibrant sounds of a jazz band, the air thick with anticipation. At the center of this electric atmosphere stood Peter Parker, his appearance sharply contrasting his usual demure persona. Clad in an elegantly sinister black ensemble, Peter exuded an uncharacteristic charisma, a dark allure that was both captivating and unsettling. The symbiote fused to his very being pulsed with a menacing energy, manipulating his actions and demeanor. As the piano keys danced under his skilled fingers, Peter delivered a performance that was anything but ordinary. His movements were exaggerated, his smile too wide. Each note played with a reckless abandon that was unlike him. The crowd, unaware of the internal turmoil he wrestled with, cheered him on, swept up in the spectacle. Among the audience was Gwen Stacy, who sat uncomfortably close to the stage. Her eyes, wide with a mix of admiration and concern, followed every one of Peter's movements. She sensed something deeply amiss. The man on stage only a shadow of the Peter she knew. Across the room, Mary Jane Watson stood isolated amidst the revelry, her heart sinking with each passing moment. The show was a dagger to her feelings, each of Peter's grand gestures a clear message meant to alienate her further. Her eyes, filled with hurt and confusion, never strayed from him, trying to reconcile this stranger with the man she loved. The climax of the performance saw Peter leap from the piano, grabbing Gwen in a dramatic flourish that ended in an elaborate dance. The crowd erupted in applause, but the dance was not for them. It was a calculated display of dominance, a way to spite Mary Jane. As the song reached its end, Peter dipped Gwen dramatically. Their eyes locked in a silent acknowledgement of the strange and tense situation. Once the applause died down, Peter strutted over to Mary Jane, his demeanor cocky, fueled by the symbiote's influence. "This is the real me, MJ, better than I ever was," he declared coldly, when she confronted him about his bizarre behavior. The confrontation escalated quickly, their voices rising over the lingering notes of the jazz band. Suddenly, Peter's hand shot out, pushing Mary Jane with a force that sent her tumbling to the ground. The room fell silent, the playful ambience shattered by the thud of her fall. Shock registered briefly on Peter's face, a flicker of his old self, horrified at his actions. But it was quickly smothered by the symbiote's control, his features hardening into an expression of indifference, hurt and humiliated. Mary Jane fled the bar, her escape unnoticed by Peter, who was now basking in a twisted satisfaction. Outside, the cool night air did little to soothe her turmoil. Tears blurred her vision as she stumbled through the streets, her mind a whirl of confusion and sorrow. In her heartache, she looked up just in time to see a black figure swinging through the air. Peter, or rather Spider-Man, was heading toward the nearby church, a dark silhouette against the city lights. Compelled by a mix of fear and unresolved love, Mary Jane followed, her steps quickening as the towering outline of the church loomed ahead. The night echoed with the distant tolling of church bells, a foreboding soundtrack to her pursuit. Meanwhile, Gwen, left alone and distraught outside the bar, was approached by Eddie Brock. His concern seemed genuine, but his motives were anything but pure. As he comforted Gwen, his eyes remained fixed on the swinging figure of Spider-Man, his mind churning with plans of vengeance. For Eddie, the night was an opportunity, a chance to advance his own agenda disguised under the pretense of consolation. Mary Jane's arrival at the church was timed with Peter's painful separation from the symbiote. The sound of the church bells mixed with Peter's cries of agony created a cacophony that chilled her to the bone. Inside the symbiote, now a sentient mass of darkness, writhed in pain on the church floor. As Mary Jane entered, her presence unnoticed, she inadvertently stepped too close. The alien creature, desperate and cunning, sensed a new host, one ripe with emotional turmoil and vulnerability. The black goo surged forward, latching onto her leg. Mary Jane gasped, her tears forgotten as she felt the cold, alien presence crawl up her body. It whispered promises of power and revenge, preying on her pain and anger. Within moments, it encapsulated her, and she felt an overwhelming rush of dark energy coursing through her veins. Outside, Peter, free from the symbiote's grip, but weakened, staggered away, oblivious to the transformation occurring within the church. Mary Jane, now encased in the black suit, stood up. Her eyes, once full of hurt, now glowed with a sinister light, reflecting her new, terrifying persona. She-Venom was born. The streets of New York, usually alive with the buzz of constant activity, seemed strangely subdued as Mary Jane, now enveloped in the black slick sheen of the symbiote, exited the church. Her movements were fluid, more graceful and powerful than she had ever felt in her own skin. Inside her, the symbiote pulsed with a life of its own, whispering dark thoughts and amplifying her every negative emotion, resentment, anger, and betrayal. It fed on her pain, particularly the fresh wounds inflicted by Peter and Harry. Mary Jane paused. Beneath a streetlight, the tendrils of the symbiote coiling around her limbs like a lover's embrace. She closed her eyes, letting the alien consciousness merge fully with her own. It sifted through her memories, latching onto every moment of sorrow or rage, reshaping her grievances with Peter's recent actions into a sharp lance of vengeance. The most potent images were those involving Harry Osborn, his deceit, his manipulations, and the cruel way he had used her to hurt Peter. The symbiote's voice was a seductive whisper, drawing a dark plan. Harry Osborn, it hissed, the source of your pain. He deserves to feel this hurt, this betrayal. Mary Jane's lips curled into a smile, not quite her own, as she felt the righteous fury build within her. The plan was simple: confront Harry, make him understand the depth of her anguish, and then let him feel the same despair. Navigating the rooftops with a newfound agility, Mary Jane made her way to Harry's luxurious penthouse. The city lights blurred below, a sweeping panorama of silent witnesses to the drama unfolding in its shadows. She landed on his balcony with a grace that belied the storm raging in her heart. The glass doors to the penthouse were unlocked, almost inviting her in. Inside, Harry was alone, nursing a drink, lost in thought. The shadows cast by the dim lighting hid the worst of his recent injuries, remnants of his last encounter with Peter. At the sound of her entrance, he looked up, a mixture of surprise and confusion crossing his features. "Mary Jane, how did you get in here?" he stammered, rising to his feet. His eyes widened in shock as the dim light caught the gleam of the symbiote's suit. "I came to talk, Harry, about everything, about us, about Peter." Mary Jane's voice was calm, but underneath the symbiote seethed. Pushing her forward, she stepped closer, her presence imposing. "You used me, Harry, just a pawn in your little game with Peter." Harry backed away, his initial shock turning into alarm. "MJ, you need to calm down, I can explain," he began. But Mary Jane wasn't there to listen. The room seemed to darken as she allowed the symbiote to expand, tendrils of black goo reaching out towards Harry, who stumbled backwards, knocking over a table in his haste. "I don't want your explanations, Harry. I want you to feel what I felt," she shouted, the symbiote amplifying her voice to a terrifying echo. The confrontation escalated quickly. Harry, driven by a survival instinct, made a desperate grab for his emergency glider, a prototype tucked away in his study. But Mary Jane, powered by the symbiote, was faster. She caught him just as he reached the glider, her tendrils wrapping around his arm, pulling him back with incredible force. The struggle was brief and brutal. Mary Jane, or rather She-Venom, was not just a match for Harry. She was his superior in every way now. With the symbiote's power coursing through her veins, she unleashed a barrage of blows, each one fueled by a cocktail of anger and the symbiote's lust for chaos. Harry, despite his best efforts to defend himself, was quickly overpowered. As he lay on the floor, battered and barely conscious, Mary Jane loomed over him. The symbiote whispered cruel satisfaction into her ear, urging her to finish it. But deep down, a small part of Mary Jane resisted, horrified by the violence she was capable of. This moment of hesitation was all Harry needed to gasp out a plea. "Mary Jane, please. This isn't you. Don't let this thing take you over. Please," he managed, but his voice was broken. She paused, her heart, a storm of conflicting emotions. The symbiote urged her to silence him forever, but she couldn't. Instead, she recoiled, the tendrils retracting as she staggered back, leaving Harry lying amid the wreckage of his once immaculate living room. Turning away, She-Venom vanished into the night, leaving Harry bruised and alone, the echo of his own pain mingling with the haunting silence that followed her departure. As the night deepened, the city's shimmering lights cast long shadows across its streets, the darkness almost palpable in its intensity. Mary Jane, now completely overtaken by the symbiote's influence, felt an unsettling calm as she fled Harry's penthouse. The adrenaline that had surged through her veins during the confrontation began to ebb, leaving her to grapple with the fragmented pieces of her humanity. Despite the symbiote's dominance, Mary Jane's own consciousness flickered weakly within, horrified by the violence she had inflicted on Harry. Back at her apartment, the familiar surroundings only served to heighten the stark contrast between her current state and the life she had known. She-Venom stood in the center of the room, a stranger in her own home, the symbiote's sleek black form shimmering under the soft light. The walls, adorned with photographs of happier times with Peter, seemed to mock her with memories of a past now tainted with betrayal and anger. Meanwhile, Peter, his Spider-Man suit clinging to him like a second skin, raced across the city, driven by a desperate need to find Mary Jane. His mind was a turmoil of guilt and fear, the image of Harry's bloodied form etched into his memory. He replayed Harry's last words over and over. MJ did it. The thought that Mary Jane, the woman he loved, could be capable of such violence was almost too much to bear. Arriving at MJ's apartment, Peter found the door ajar, an ominous silence greeting him as he entered. The place was undisturbed, save for a faint, almost imperceptible trace of the symbiote's presence. His heart sank as the realization hit him. Mary Jane was lost, consumed by the same dark force he had once borne. His next stop was the last place he wanted to visit, Harry's penthouse. The scene that awaited him was one of chaos and destruction, a stark testament to the brutal encounter that had taken place. Harry lay in the center of the room, his breathing shallow, his body a mess of bruises and cuts. "Harry!" Peter rushed to his side, his voice choked with emotion. Harry's eyes fluttered open, focusing with difficulty on Peter's masked face. "Peter, it was MJ," he gasped, each word a struggle against the pain. "The symbiote. She's changed." Peter's hands trembled as he held Harry, the reality of the situation crashing down on him. "I'll find her, Harry. I'll help her," he promised, more to himself than to Harry. But before he could say more, Harry's eyes closed, and his body went limp. The faint pulse of life faded, leaving Peter alone with his grief and the heavy burden of his promise. Heartbroken and filled with a renewed sense of purpose, Peter donned his mask again and stepped into the cool night air. The city that had once been a vibrant backdrop to his heroic deeds now seemed a grim maze of possibilities, each shadow a potential hiding place for Mary Jane. Spider-Man made his way to the bar where the night's events had begun. The place was quiet now, the earlier chaos reduced to a few stragglers lingering over their drinks. He questioned the bartender, a middle-aged man who remembered Mary Jane's distraught exit. Left in a hurry, looked real upset, the bartender recounted, wiping down the counter. Said something about going to a church. The mention of the church sparked a flicker of recognition in Peter. The church, the symbiote. His mind raced as he pieced together the events. The church was where he had rid himself of the symbiote, and it was likely where Mary Jane had encountered it. With no time to waste, Spider-Man swung through the city, his course set for the church. As he approached, the silhouette of the steeple loomed against the night sky, a beacon of hope amidst his fear. He knew that whatever awaited him there, the confrontation with Mary Jane would be unlike any battle he had faced before. The stakes were personal, and the enemy was one he loved. As he landed softly on the church's roof, his resolve hardened. He was ready to save Mary Jane no matter the cost. Under the stark glow of the moon, Spider-Man perched atop the church's ancient steeple, his eyes scanning the shadowy grounds below. The air was thick with the chill of impending dawn, the silence of the night pierced only by the distant sirens and the occasional rustle of autumn leaves. The church, a site of solace and refuge in daylight, now seemed foreboding, a stage set for a showdown that Peter Parker wished he could avoid. From the darkness emerged a figure, clad in the slick ebony sheen of the symbiote. Mary Jane, or rather She-Venom, moved with a predatory grace, her every step resonant with the newfound power that coursed through her veins. As she stepped into the moonlight, her features twisted into a sinister version of the woman Peter had loved. The symbiote had melded with her, enhancing her physical form, making her appear both alluring and terrifying. Mary Jane, Peter called out softly from above. MJ looked up, her eyes glinting with a dark fire. "We need to talk." She-Venom laughed, a sound that was both Mary Jane's and something else entirely. "Talk?" she mocked, her voice echoing around the silent churchyard. "There's nothing left to say, Peter. Only to do." Peter swung down, landing a few feet away from her, his posture defensive yet open, a clear sign he was here to parley, not to fight. "This isn't you, MJ. This thing," he gestured to the symbiote. "It's using you, feeding off your anger and hurt." She-Venom circled him, her movements predatory. "Or maybe it's freed me," she countered. "Freed me to see the world as it is, to take what I deserve." Peter shook his head, stepping closer, his voice urgent. "You don't believe that. This isn't freedom, it's enslavement. You're under its control, MJ. Let me help you get free." The standoff continued, tension crackling in the air like static. She-Venom suddenly lunged faster than Peter expected, her fists powered by symbiotic strength. He dodged, using his agility to avoid direct confrontation. "I don't want to fight you, I love you," he said. The battle shifted to the streets, their figures a blur of motion under the city's dim streetlights. She-Venom's attacks were relentless, fueled by the symbiote's influence, each strike intended to cripple or maim. Peter, however, focused on evasion and containment, his efforts concentrated on subduing rather than harming. As they neared a construction site, Peter's strategic mind kicked into gear. The site, littered with metal beams and heavy machinery, offered an opportunity, as Peter knew in this moment that the symbiote's weakness was sound. Amidst the chaos of their battle, he led She-Venom towards a towering crane, its base surrounded by electrical equipment. "Mary Jane, listen to me. You need to hear this. It's about Harry," Peter began. Mary Jane, momentarily grounded by the mention of Harry's name, faltered, the tendrils of the symbiote pausing as if caught in thought. "He's gone, MJ. Harry's dead," Peter continued, each word weighed down with sorrow. The news struck Mary Jane like a physical blow, the symbiote's grip loosening slightly as her own shock and grief surged to the forefront. "He told me, with his last breath, he said it was you. But I know it wasn't you. Not really. It's this thing on you, controlling you. You're not a killer, MJ." Mary Jane's expression crumbled, the remnants of her resolve waning under the heavy truth. The symbiote writhed angrily around her, sensing its hold weakening as her emotional defenses broke down. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the alien residue as her voice cracked. I didn't mean to. I don't want this, Peter. Help me." With a swift move, he webbed her to the metal beam just as she was about to strike, and then flipped the switch on a nearby generator. The sudden burst of sound and vibration from the machinery resonated at just the right frequency to weaken the symbiote. She-Venom roared in pain as the vibrations tore through her, the symbiote writhing in agony. Peter, his heart breaking at the sight of Mary Jane's suffering, approached cautiously. "MJ, fight it! You're stronger than it." For a moment, there was silence as the battle within her raged. Then, slowly, the black ooze began to recede, pulling back from her face, revealing Mary Jane's sweat-streaked, tear-stained features. "Peter," she said, as he fell to the ground. Peter rushed to her side, supporting her as the last of the symbiotes slithered away, retreating into the shadows from whence it came. "I've got you," he assured her. "I'm here." The first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, casting light over the city, and the two figures at the construction site, Mary Jane free from the symbiote's grasp, but exhausted and fragile, leaned into Peter. Together they looked over the city they had saved, and the personal cost it had exacted on them both. As they made their way back through the awakening city, their hands clasped tightly, there was a sense of tentative hope. The road to recovery would be long and fraught with challenges, but they faced it together, strengthened by the ordeal they had overcome, and the unbreakable bond that, despite everything, remained intact. The city had begun to stir, as the first light of day painted the skyline in hues of orange and pink. In the calm aftermath of the night's tumult, Peter and Mary Jane found themselves in Central Park, a place that had always offered them solace and a semblance of normalcy amid the chaos of their lives. They walked slowly along a path lined with early blooming cherry blossoms, their petals fluttering gently to the ground with the morning breeze. Peter watched Mary Jane closely, noting the pallor of her face and the quiet contemplation in her eyes. She was free from the symbiote's grasp, but the shadow of the night's events lingered around her. Breaking the silence, he spoke softly. "Harry's funeral is tomorrow. I know it's going to be hard, but I think we should go, to say goodbye properly." Mary Jane nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the ground. "I owe him that much," she murmured, the guilt evident in her voice. "And his family. They deserve an apology, even if I can never fully explain what happened." Peter reached out, taking her hand in his. "We'll do it together, and we'll tell them how brave Harry was, how he tried to reach out to you, to save you from the symbiote." They found a bench by the park's pond, the city sounds muffled by the tranquility of the morning. As they sat, Mary Jane leaned her head on Peter's shoulder. The symbiote. It showed me such dark things, Peter. It felt like it knew exactly where to hurt the most. How do we fight something like that if it ever comes back? Peter sighed, his eyes tracing the flight of a lone duck across the water. We fight it by holding on to who we are, to each other. We can't let fear of what might happen control us. We've seen the worst it can do, and we've survived. We'll be more prepared next time, more vigilant. The conversation paused as they both lost themselves in thought, watching the early joggers and the fluttering birds. After a moment, Peter added, "Harry once told me that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and facing it anyway. That's what we need to do." Mary Jane lifted her head, looking at him with renewed determination. "Then we'll face it together. No more secrets, no more going it alone. We're stronger together, aren't we?" Peter smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "Always have been," he affirmed. As they stood to leave, their steps took them back towards the heart of the city, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But first, they would pay their respects to a friend lost too soon, ensuring his memory was honored and that his passing was not in vain. The funeral would be a somber affair, but also a chance to mend fences and to publicly affirm their unity in the face of adversity. In this quiet epilogue to the night's dramatic events, Peter and Mary Jane found a moment of peace, a brief interlude to gather strength for the challenges that lay ahead. They understood that the path forward would be fraught with difficulties, but with each other's support, they felt ready to meet them head on.